All right, let's get going. So, hello everyone. Thank you once again for joining us. Uh, my name is Nathan Grove. I am an admission counselor for Amherst College, and welcome to College to Career Humanities Edition presented by the Stars College Network. So, we're going to talk a little bit about what studying the humanities looks like in college, what the humanities even are, and then the possible career paths for people who are majoring and studying the humanities after they graduate from college. So, Jason, if you hit the next slide. This is who we are. We have four representatives from four of our STARS College Network schools up here today. Everyone's going to introduce themselves when we get to the part of the presentation that they're covering. But again, my name is Nathan, and I'm going to quickly pass it over to my colleague, Allison.
Thanks so much, Nathan. Hi, everyone. My name is Allison Glace. I'm from the University of Notre Dame, where I serve as an admission counselor and our program coordinator for rural outreach and engagement. I'm super excited to kick things off talking about the STARS College Network, which has brought us all here together this evening. So, the STARS College Network, STARS standing for Small Town and Rural Students, was founded as a consortium of some of the best colleges and universities all across the nation in an effort to create better access to those coming from rural and small town communities. Our ultimate goal is to create programs, resources, hosting both virtual and in-person events all throughout the year to ensure that no matter where a student lives, the nation's best and brightest are able to access any and every school that may be of the best fit for them. All right. And so we actually have 32 colleges and universities all across the country who are part of our STARS College Network, as you can see on the screen here today.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Allison. So, a little bit about what the Stars College Network actually does. These are kind of our four pillars of engagement. We do a lot of travel, so we travel together, driving and flying around the country to visit small town and rural areas. I've actually traveled with everyone who's on this call with me today. We do programs on campuses, so bringing you students to us through like fly-in programs or drive-in programs, things like that. That are fully funded by the STARS College Network so that you get a chance to actually see what's happening on these college campuses, figure out whether or not they might be the right fit for you. We do virtual college access and affordability programming, like the one that you're on right now. This is part of our virtual series that we do throughout the year. We often do one to two different virtual programs each month focusing on things like financial aid, career access, getting ready for college, all of that sort of stuff. And then on-campus support systems. So these are the types of things that you probably won't experience until you're actually a student at a STARS institution. But talking about working with rural students once they're on campus to make sure that they're succeeding and making the most out of their college experiences after they've been admitted and enrolled and arrive on campus as a first year. Okay, so what actually are the humanities? This is our most basic definition of the humanities are the study of how people process and document the human experience. What does that actually mean? We have a nice quote here from one of our STARS schools, Northwestern. I'm just going to read it out and then talk slightly about it. So, the humanities are an interdisciplinary collection of fields that differ from physical, biological, and certain social sciences by concentrating on the study and interpretation of human thought and culture. The humanities include literature, philosophy, history, law, art, and music, as well as other cultural forms and practices such as film, dance, theater, media, and religion. The humanities explore how we make sense of our complex and globalized world. Studying them permits us to examine ourselves and what it means to be human here and now, as well as elsewhere and in the past. The humanities foster a critical perspective on human artifacts and records of human experience, verbal, visual, oral, enabling us to learn through a combination of interpretive and analytical research, how to think creatively about questions that often do not have set answers. So you guys, as high school students, already have experience in the humanities. Every time you take a history class or a social science class or an English or literature type of class, those are all humanities. I majored in English, was one of my majors in college. I was a humanities student. This is something that everyone is familiar with, but I think what we're less familiar with is the actual definition of these things being grouped together. And the definitions do shift. Some people will draw a distinction between the arts and humanities, other people don't. But all of these studies looking at what it means to be human, the study of what we as humans create, our history records, our art forms, all of that sort of stuff is what it means to study the humanities. So to talk a little bit about more about these definitions, I'm going to hand it over to my colleague, Jason.
Hi, everyone. My name is Jason Mogan. I am the Senior Assistant Director of Admission at Brown University. And I'm excited to chat with you about the humanities as somebody who also majored in the humanities. I was a religion major when I was in college. And the humanities really encompasses so many different areas of study because it is the study of the human condition and how we engage with one another and our past. So these four categories that we provide here are some general buckets. And as Nathan said, you'll find that some colleges and universities draw some distinctions between these areas and the social sciences. So some schools will categorize history as the humanities, others might call it a social science. Some schools will have the arts as their own division, and they'll also put the arts under the humanities. But these are the four that you'll see generally across the United States in the arts and humanities. So starting with the arts, one of the big distinctions we like to point out is that the arts encompasses both creating, performing in visual arts, and the study of the arts. So you can be studying art by creating fiber arts, plastic arts, visual arts, or you can be studying arts through the lens of art history and critiquing art, analyzing it, understanding its historical context and societal context in which it was created. Other majors that you may find include dance, film studies, literature, creative writing, theater. All of this is housed under what are some of the symbolic ways that we engage with one another and understand who we are as humans. The next category is language and cultural studies. This is both how do you speak these languages, and also do you understand the cultural context of these languages and these different cultures all around the world. Again, these majors can come in a number of different names. So one of the ones that we list out here is Spanish, but you may find universities have more regionally specific majors like Latin American, Iberian cultures and Hispanic studies. You may find other majors like Jewish studies, American popular culture, American studies, Middle Eastern studies, pretty much anywhere around the world that you can think of that has a cultural lens would fall under this category. As a religion major, I really like talking about philosophy and religion. A lot of students think that when you study philosophy and religion, you're being taught how to believe a particular philosophy or to be a particular type of religion or have a particular religious orientation. But when you study the humanities in a university setting, it's often about critiquing a philosophy, understanding a religion's cultural context and historical context. So it's studying about these things, not about how to be these things. So you may find majors like religious studies or religion that are pretty broad, or philosophy. You can also find more specific ones again, like Christianity, Islamic studies, ethics, rhetoric, depending on the university that you attend. And then the final category that we have here is human history, which I kind of see as the core of the humanities. Law, classics, history, archaeology, they're all delving in the past, understanding the past through a modern lens, how the past reflects who we are today and what lessons we can take from it. You'll find that with all of these four categories, they end up being intersectional and they do overlap with each other. So when you study something in the arts, you may study art history, which also falls under human history. If you're going to study a religion, you may find that there's a language that's connected to it or a cultural component that's connected to it. So you may find that even when you declare one of these majors, you'll actually end up dabbling in a number of these different areas along the way. Now, the humanities suffers from a marketing problem, which is that people believe that if you go into a major like English or religion, that it's going to be difficult to find a job. And that could be like nothing could be further from the truth. There's the American Academy of Arts and Sciences. They have this amazing study called the Humanities Indicators, where they aggregate all of this data about the state of the humanities across the United States and how it's connected to employment and postgraduate life. And so if you take a look here, you'll see that just as with pretty much every other field you can study in college, studying the humanities has the likelihood of being unemployed after you graduate with a bachelor's degree. In addition to that, you'll find that humanities is not limiting in what it is that you can pursue for a career after you graduate. Not that if you study English, you have to be a writer or an English teacher, or if you study philosophy, you must be a philosophy professor. When you take a look at this grid at the top, you'll see that humanities graduates generally reflect the areas of work that all college graduates pursue. It's a little bit heavier by just a couple of percentage points in fields like education and service and sales, administration. I think it makes sense that art, design, and entertainment are a little bit higher than the average college graduate's career path because the arts are housed within the humanities. But for all intents and purposes, you can pursue pretty much any field that you'd like and have a humanities degree. So you can study English and then go into marketing and design. You can be a religion major and go into law. You can work in administration and scientific organizations because you are developing critical thinking skills as a humanities major. You are understanding how to evaluate evidence and to craft arguments through the information that you have and to think across all different perspectives and different lenses. And that's what you're bringing into any job you pursue after you graduate from college. So I'm going to pass it on over to talk about a good fit for a degree in the humanities.
Thank you, Jason. Hello, my name is Abigail Trice. I am the Senior Coordinator of Admissions and Rural Recruitment at the University of Maryland College Park. And while we are all letting you know our own humanities connections, I am a UMD alum and I majored in anthropology. So definitely have that humanities connection myself, and happy to chat about kind of what makes a good fit for a degree in the humanities. So the most one of the most important aspects or qualities you can have when considering pursuing a degree in humanities is really just a deep curiosity about how the world works, how people experience the world, how that shifts and changes over time, and how we kind of collectively organize in those fashions. So definitely one of the key things that will prepare you for a degree in the humanities. There are other examples here, and I will chat through those in just a second, but I do want to emphasize that if you see one of these bullet points and you think, wow, it's not really a strong suit of mine, that doesn't necessarily discount you or disqualify you in terms of pursuing a degree in the humanities. It really is, maybe an area of opportunity, something you could improve on. But as my colleagues before have said, the name of the game with humanities really is interdisciplinary studies and application of what it is you're learning. So, these are great aspects or great qualities that you can have while considering pursuing a degree in the humanities, but they are this is not an exhaustive list, and they are definitely not all something you have to be an expert at going into this pursuit. So if you're a strong communicator, you're someone that finds you speak well, you can write well, you can really convey ideas and information to other people in a format that is digestible and something that they can really take that information away from. That is a great skill to have when it comes to the humanities. And that really goes into the next bullet point of you're synthesizing complex material, right? So you are pulling from all different forms of mediums, different information, and really trying to look for a common theme amongst that and synthesize that information. So the more that you are able to communicate that out and have other people understand that, that's a pretty good skill that will carry you far in the humanities. Going along with that deep curiosity, maybe you have an interest in research or problem solving. Maybe it's you really like analyzing things and getting to the bottom of it. You like exploring different aspects, maybe seeing things from a new perspective and kind of being able to add that perspective into what it is you're looking at and studying. Those skills will definitely serve you well. I think often when we talk about research and it gets to kind of a quantifiable area, a lot of people associate that with more STEM heavy or STEM related pathways. And that's great there too. But it's definitely important for the humanities and that deep curiosity of how do things work and what does this tell me about the human experience? Also, if you are someone that, is
considers yourself pretty culturally competent. Maybe you dabble in different cultures. Maybe they just interest you deeply and you want to know more about them and kind of how you can, what you can draw from that. That is something that will serve you well. And the more you can kind of expand into those different languages, cross cultural knowledge. Thank you. Sorry about that. The more well-rounded and holistic your perspective is going to be. So definitely, the more you can kind of incorporate there, the better. Similarly, I think something that is pretty STEM heavy or associated well with STEM is kind of a one track solution or maybe a few ways to solve a problem and they're pretty established. Whereas in the humanities, it is definitely a skill and a tool to be able to think out of the box, think creatively, and kind of offer that new perspective or added perspective to what it is you're looking into, you're researching, you're communicating out, those kinds of things. So taking a different approach is something that serves you well in the humanities. It is something that happens across, disciplines and cultures and those few buckets that we talked about before. So out of the box thinking, great to have in the humanities. Also, being persuasive, being able to get people on board with what it is you're thinking. So, you've got the communication skills, you are getting people to understand what it is, what information you want to convey to them. And then if you're making an argument with that information and you find that you are strong in persuading people to understand where it is you're coming from and why it is you're making that argument and ultimately to agree with you or disagree if needed, those are skills that are going to serve you well. And then this was common in what my colleagues talked about before, but the definition of humanities changes. It shifts from time to time, place to place. So that flexibility and adaptability is really going to serve you well as you think to pursue a degree in the humanities, whether it be in the source material you're working with or the arguments or information that you're conveying, kind of being able to work on the fly and roll with the punches and convey that information that is going to serve you well. So, how can you prepare for success when considering pursuing a humanities major or degree? Cannot emphasize this enough that this is a common theme in your admissions process overall. Each university is going to have different program requirements, different things that they like to see in terms of admission. So definitely make sure as you're doing your college search and you're thinking about what majors schools offer and what it is you might want to pursue, that you're also looking into, what that program will look like at that school and maybe any requirements you can take or look to take while you're in high school to kind of prepare you for that. Also, strong interdisciplinary foundation. We have kind of danced around this a lot and talked about it a good bit, but the more aspects of your education that you can pull from will serve you extremely well. And so you can prepare yourself setting up in high school to kind of take courses in those different areas and really have a strong background in multiple arenas. And then that will help you when it comes to conveying that information and really contextualizing it within the bounds of what you know. So the more you know, the better in terms of the humanities and your interdisciplinary preparation. And then finally, reading and writing are a big part of the humanities. So if you can incorporate that heavily into your coursework, that is something that will serve you well and give you a really strong foundation, once again, to work from as you enter into this degree pathway. Outside of school, there are a few things that you can do. And once again, these are non-exhaustive lists. So there are other things that you can do, but these are just things we want to highlight. Any kind of opportunity for hands-on problem solving. I know I was a first-generation college student. I worked a lot in high school and into college, and I often found that my work experience was teaching me just as much as some of what I was learning in the classroom. So wherever it is that you find those opportunities for hands-on problem solving, don't shy away from them, lean into them. They are going to prepare you well and kind of give you that basis and that pathway to think through as you dive deeper into the humanities. Any opportunities for shadowing and internships kind of goes hand in hand with the work experience, like I was just talking about. that is going to give you a good basis for how your degree will play out in the real world per se, in the work that you're doing, and to kind of get a good background for, hey, these people are working in maybe a field I'm interested in. What does that look like for me? So if you can take advantage of those opportunities, we highly encourage that. Any leadership roles you have, that is going to help develop a lot of those skills we just talked about, whether it's communicating, making a persuasive argument, things like that. Leadership roles are really going to develop you and help you as you prepare for this pathway. And then any community-oriented activities. If the name of the game with humanities is the human experience and how that is experienced across time and cultures, then the more involved you are in your community or the communities around you, the more kind of lived experience you can bring into this field or into the field of your choice. So definitely want to involve yourself as much as possible and really seek to kind of get that hands-on experience and leadership where at all possible. So with that said, I'm going to turn it over to my colleague Allison to talk about life at college as a humanities major.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Okay. So I'm really excited to talk more in depth about life at college as a humanities major. The slight irony here, in undergrad, I was not a humanities major. I studied mathematical sciences and economics, so kind of opposite end. But as I pursued my studies, got involved in research, interned, I found that my passion was with people and in the field of education. And so I shifted gears after graduation and pursued education in my master's. So I was a humanities major at the graduate level and really fell in love with all things education. Some of, I think, the key highlights, as we've previously mentioned, there is so much flexibility, which I think is really incredible about being a humanities major, allowing you, to truly pursue your passions and interests and provide opportunity for discovery of what those passions and interests may be. The courses tend to be more reading, writing, and or discussion based compared to like a plug and chug into a formula. As a STEM major, there's a lot of flexibility with coursework, which is great, very open-ended. It's, you don't have the pressure of like a single specific answer that you're searching for. It's often a lot more about like developing that creativity, critical thinking, engaging with others, developing those skills, just like we mentioned. And so your path as a humanities major may mirror some of the things I discuss here. It also could end up being, a little bit different. That's okay. Everyone's college experience tends to be different and unique, and that makes it absolutely beautiful. And so we touched on the high school prep component, obviously pursuing a college prep curriculum. So taking courses in math, science, history, English, world language, arts, elective courses, things like dance, theater, film, music, really, again, exploring all of those academic interests that you may have. Additionally, into some of those like core curriculum and graduation requirements that you might have, or requirements that the individual institutions may have, you also can explore additional offerings that may be available through a local college or university via dual enrollment or dual credit. There may be local theater groups, county or state programs, district, regional bands, choirs, things like that, things that some of you may already be involved with. Additionally, there's a local art studio or museum that you can get involved in, theater programs, all the sorts. And so during your high school experience, one thing we definitely encourage you to do as participants with the STARS College Network is to take advantage of some of our summer programs. So we offer rural fly-ins at multiple of our institutions. Some of these fly-in programs feature specific humanities-related work. You also could pursue summer internships, other humanities related jobs. Maybe you seek out some mentors in fields that you may be considering, or, just reaching out again to college admissions counselors and staff, like those of us on this session today, to get more connected, to find out more about specific majors. I see some students have already taken advantage of the Q&A as well to ask some specific humanities related questions. So that's great too. We're here to be resources for you. And so as you know, as you're accessing all these different fields of information, this college search, I know sometimes can be a little daunting, whether you're a rising senior, maybe a newer freshman to high school, wherever you're at in your process is a great place to be. One of the key things in your college search is looking for that desired major. A lot of times I'll meet students at college fairs who want to pursue nursing. Unfortunately, that's something that Notre Dame doesn't offer. And so in that instance, it wouldn't be a good fit. But, for example, if you're wanting to pursue a specific humanities field, such as like English, maybe you're looking at political science for like a pre-law, make sure those schools have those offerings. And a lot of that can just be done with a simple Google search with the university or college's name and, offered undergraduate majors. The other thing, too, is you can always reach out to the admissions staff at those universities as well. And so with that college search, you may also be interested to find out, in addition to the coursework, what other opportunities will you have to embrace or pursue these different outlets within the field of humanities. Maybe you're in more of the arts or performing fields. Do they have performing venues? Who do they bring to campus to perform? What sort of opportunities might you have there? Additionally, any sort of like research, co-ops, internships, anything to give you even more hands-on real-world experience within various forms of industry. Additionally, with that college search, one thing, if possible, we always encourage students to visit the campus in person if you can. Like I mentioned, a lot of our STARS institutions offer fly-in programs to come visit. Additionally, some offer more regionally based drive-in programs as well, where we can help provide that funding. But if you're unable to attend a college in person for a visit, most of our institutions have virtual tours online, as well as other virtual programming, kind of similar to this, but where you can interact and meet current students to learn more about the specific institution. Numerous colleges and universities attend college fairs all across the country. And again, really trying to embrace any sort of in-person and virtual experiences that will help you determine what institution is your best fit. And so with that, in college, you're going to have academic advisors or a single advisor, depends on how the program works at your institution, who are there to be a support for you. And so they're going to be able to help you as you search through to declaring a major, maybe double majoring. I saw we had some questions come in about double majoring, especially across different fields such as humanities and STEM. Additionally, like if there's minors or concentrations, they're going to be an incredible resource for you. Maybe you're coming in with some advanced placement credit or dual enrollment credit, and that may fit really well into a particular minor or major. They're going to be able to help you figure out what your best path may be. Another thing too is it's okay if you're not sure what you want to major in. As someone who changed their major 3 times, which I recently read is like the national average, do not fret. Whether you're thinking you want to go in undecided, or you go in with one major and quickly realize that is not what you want to pursue in life. Don't consider it a waste of time. It was a learning opportunity. You learned that it wasn't meant for you, and that's great, which is going to allow you to pursue something else. And so again, there are incredible resources at the colleges and institutions available for you from the academic standpoint. There's also great resources from a career standpoint. And so all of our STARS institutions, as well as non-STARS institutions, have career advising support and resources that are there to help you find internships, get involved in research, network with professionals. For example, like Notre Dame, we have our own LinkedIn just for current Notre Dame students and alumni. A lot of institutions have these specific type programs that allow current students to better network with their alumni and find experiences in their intended fields. And I believe Jason is going to kick things off with our real student journeys.
Yes, so it's really easy to talk in hypotheticals about the humanities, and we wanted to show you a couple of student examples and how they went from high school to their career after college so that you can get a little bit of a sense of what it is actually like to have a humanities experience. You'll see for each of the students we show, there's one for each of our institutions, some consistent themes, but also some pretty big differences. And it just really shows that the humanities has such breadth both in what you can study and what you can do with it after you graduate. So we'll start with an example from Brown. This is our friend Jack. So Jack came from a rural part of Maryland, from a town that had a population of about 6,000 people. And he really discovered the humanities when he got to Brown University because we have something called an open curriculum, which Amherst, I believe, has as well, where we don't have any general education requirements. And so Jack really took advantage of the fact that he was just taking classes because they sounded really exciting to him and he enjoyed them and thought it might be connected to what he'd like to do. So he studied as an undergraduate anthropology and literary arts. Brown has a program where you can add on a fifth year, and he graduated in 5 years with a master's in American Studies. And he realized that this was the path he wanted to take because he sought out funding for a research opportunity through the university. It's called an Undergraduate Teaching and Research Award, and he was able to do anthropology research out in the field in Peru. He actually discovered that anthropology wasn't what really excited him so much after doing this research, after taking courses. And so he took advantage of the freedom of taking whatever classes he'd like, and he discovered that he was really interested in creative nonfiction. He took a class in it and loved it, and he made his way into journalism because of that. So he was a senior editor the Brown Daily Herald. He got an internship with the Washington Blade. He loved it. And after he graduated, he started working for local news in West Virginia, ended up going into public radio, really stuck with local small town news in a similar region to where he grew up. He ended up becoming a state house reporter. He did daily news coverage from the state capitol in West Virginia and is now sticking out with a full career. So at this point, he's now taking a break. He's gone back to graduate school. He's in New York City. He got funding that covered tuition, housing, and meals, and is getting a master's from the CUNY School of Journalism.
Thanks so much, Jason. All right, I'm back to talk about my friend Kaylin. Kaylin actually is my friend. We came in as first years at Amherst together. We met on a scientific research trip to Hawaii for the Amherst Geology Department. So not exactly humanities. I ended up majoring in geology. Kaylin did not. But so Kaylin is from Lee Vining, California, which is this tiny little tourism town a little bit north of Yosemite National Park. They graduated from with a graduating class of 5 students, including them, so 4 others. They played on the basketball team at their school, which is like literally the only sports team that their school is big enough to have, which I think is an awesome story. But while Kaylin was at Amherst, they wrote for The Student, which is our student newspaper. They served as editor-in-chief for 1 year, which was their junior year, and wrote 35 stories over 4 years, and really kind of fell in love with doing journalism work and investigating kind of these real people stories, focusing a lot on employment and housing displacement and things like that. So they did some summer internships with The Current and the Mammoth Times. The Current is a newspaper based out of coastal Georgia, and then the Mammoth Times is in Eastern California, actually right kind of near Kaylin's hometown. So those were 2 different summers. They did coastal Georgia first, and then they did The Current first, and then the Mammoth Times after that. They then wrote a senior honors thesis at Amherst called The Middle of Somewhere, Stories from Lee Vining, California, about their hometown. That included over 50 hours of interviews with residents of their hometown. It's this really beautiful, complicated look at what their hometown is actually like, why the people who live there, why they've chosen to stay, the people who have left, why have they chosen to leave, that sort of stuff. I have a copy of it in my office. I think it's really beautiful. It made me cry when I read it, but it's also just like really informative and touching. Then they worked as a naturalist at an outdoor education site, also near Lee Vining, California. They were teaching middle schoolers about the environment of Eastern California. So basically taking kids were getting bussed in for week-long like residential field trips from mostly the Central Valley and learning about all of the nature and environmentalism work and that sort of thing happening in the mountains on the other side of the state. So doing honestly more of that kind of STEM, but communication STEM work, tapping into a little bit of the geology classes that they took with me during their time at Amherst. Caitlin left that job, I think, 9 months ago now, and is working as a special education teacher at a school in rural Oregon, and is absolutely loving it. They also did a brief summer stint as a substitute teacher in New York City, and they're looking to apply to, they've actually already sent out all their applications and gotten accepted to teaching programs for grad school, and will be starting in the fall. So a little bit of a winding journey, only 3 years post graduating from college, and has already done a multitude of different careers, but all kind of centering around the things that they're most passionate about and learned about by studying both humanities and a little bit of sciences during their time in college.
Yeah, I'm just so inspired hearing about these students and their incredible paths. And so I'm going to chat a little bit about Shelby, who is a graduate from the University of Notre Dame. She majored in studio art, which fell under our College of Arts and Letters. So Shelby grew up in Pennsylvania, in a tiny town, less than 3,000, came to Notre Dame, instantly got involved. Some of her main involvements that she talked about when we chatted was how much she enjoyed her leadership within the Hall Council. So residential life is really popular and a really big component of the student life experience in Notre Dame. And so she stepped into a leadership capacity there. And then she also participated in study abroad in London. And from that, she pursued various career-related internships. She interned both at one of the local art museums in South Bend, as well as an art museum in Pittsburgh, more closer to her hometown. And then down the line from that, she did a fashion design intensive summer program, and that was in New York City. And so throughout this, she, after graduation, she held graphic design roles, actually at an insurance company. And so I think that again shows the incredible flexibility and opportunity as a humanities major. You may have never thought that someone or that an insurance company would need graphic designers. And so with that, she also spent some time working for a nonprofit, and then ultimately moved out to California, where she began working as a creative director, specifically for Barbie with Mattel, which I just think is like the most epic thing as someone who loved Barbie dolls as a young child. And so she really helped lead a brand refresh. And she continued on throughout all of this while also pursuing her own personal creative outlets with her specific artwork, being displayed, sold, and throughout that time, she completed 2 art residencies, one in Los Angeles, one abroad in France. And then she currently holds the job of global creative director at Dermalogica. And so again, showing that like Shelby's path with humanities not only took her all across the country, but it took her all across the world, and allowed her to pursue her creative outlets in a lot of different realms.
Alrighty, I am back. So I get the pleasure of chatting with you about Raven. She is a graduate of the class of 2020 at the University of Maryland. So a bit of a tumultuous year, but I do like to highlight that because, as Jason said earlier, the humanities has a bit of a marketing problem. And sometimes, even my parents, when I told them, "Hey, I'm going to be an anthropology major," they said, "Okay, well, what job are you going to get with that?" So. Um, in a time of global uncertainty and kind of shifting priorities and focus, her humanities background really prepared her to navigate that, and I do like to highlight that. So Raven is from Maryland. She is from a town called Bel Air, Maryland, and she went to high school there. And when Raven was in high school, she had a strong passion for nonprofit work and knew that that was kind of the avenue she wanted to explore and go into, but she wasn't quite sure exactly how she wanted to get there. So she had an English teacher that she was very close to and encouraged her to pursue communication at any school that she was, interested in. She thought that would be a very good fit. And she was kind of locked in high school. She said, I want to do communication. That is what I'm going for. And after speaking with a rep from UMD at her school, she was like, I think this is the place that I want to do that in. They have communication as a major that will serve me well there. And so that's what she did. She came to Maryland, she majored in communication, and she specifically focused on our public relations track, knowing that that was kind of the avenue that she wanted to pursue that nonprofit work in. During her time at UMD, she was in different organizations. And the PRSSA, the Public Relations Student Organization, she was a part of that. She also helped plan the Grunig Gala, and she said that was kind of through one of her classes and really helped her get that hands-on experience within her time in her education in the humanities. But what really, really kind of propelled her career was an internship in I believe the end of 2019 into 2020 with Libraries Without Borders, and they were based out of Washington, D.C., just a few miles down the road from us. And in that time, once again, the world's a little unpredictable. We don't know what's going to happen. And they found ways to kind of forge ahead and make tech kits to send out to students so that they could still complete their work and had Wi-Fi reliably and things like that. And she was like, I'm in the right place. I'm doing exactly what I need to do. So she went forward and went forth, and she has stuck in the nonprofit world since then with her focus in communication and public relations and kind of being able to highlight the wonderful work in these organizations that she's a part of and what they're doing. So she had her internship and she graduated, and then she interviewed for her current position. And she said they didn't necessarily lead to each other, but in her interview for her current position, they had worked closely with the Libraries Without Borders organization, and they were very familiar with what work she was doing. And that was a strong basis for why she was a good fit for the role that she has now. So that is, again, to highlight the work-based aspect, the hands-on learning can really give you those soft skills and skills in general that will connect you to what it is you want to do, even if they are not immediately apparently connected. So she is in her current position at the Annie E. Casey Foundation. She is a communication associate there, and she works in Baltimore, Maryland. When I chatted with Raven preparing for tonight's webinar, she highlighted that a big part of her work is storytelling, and she thinks that is directly attributable to her humanities coursework. She, is able to do that and to really do it meaningfully because of the strong foundation she had built in the courses that she took and the connections that she made. And that leads me to my next point of connections are incredibly important, in any field, obviously, but especially with the humanities. And she found that the connections that she had made had really primed her to be in a good position for where she is now. So looking ahead, she is already a part of a communication networking group. She was a part of it before she was in her current position. So she's looking to really build and stay in that. And really build that network up, and then continue her work storytelling and really connecting with the communities in the greater Baltimore area.
All right. So hopefully you've seen from all of the examples here there's a lot of different paths that students take. There's a little bit of STEM, there's a little bit of social sciences, the humanities, the arts. You saw storytelling, you saw communications, teaching. There's so many different avenues that these students pursued with a number of different majors and concentrations. So please check out each of our institutions. We've linked here ways to learn more about each of our schools. You can also find out more about all 32 STAR schools by visiting the STARS College website. Also, you can visit the website by using this QR code here. We have more virtual programs that you can check out. There are resources that can support you with your education, including Khan Academy and Schoolhouse. We're very big proponents on taking a look into cost, affordability, and financial aid. And so we have tips on how to do that. So there are a lot of ways to engage with us. And so with that, we're welcoming you to ask us questions in the Q&A feature that we have through Zoom, and we'd be happy to answer some of those live.
Jason, while we wait for a couple more questions to roll in, we've had a lot of questions that we've answered in the Q&A box about double majoring or majoring and minoring, whether that's in the humanities or majoring in something that is not humanities and still studying the humanities with your second major or with your minor. Would anyone here give any advice or any experiences from people from graduates of our institutions about what that process is like and how it can be beneficial?
I would be happy to chat about this. So Nathan, great point. I was seeing those questions roll in and I said, oh, that's common amongst the students here in our audience. So I did mention I was an anthropology major at Maryland. I also double majored in public health science. So I kind of had that STEM coursework in addition to the social science or the humanities coursework. At an institution like Maryland, that's very, very possible to do. We're very double major friendly, and we highly encourage it. We appreciate the interdisciplinary approach that students really bring to the table when they pursue both avenues, whether, you're more primarily focused in STEM or the humanities, kind of whatever that looks like for you. It's a very unique pathway, but it's definitely a possibility. And I would say even highly encouraged for that interdisciplinary aspect. I think having the humanities perspective will make your STEM performance stronger and vice versa, right? Having that STEM perspective is going to give you analytical skills, reasoning, problem solving, things like that, that will kind of strengthen your humanities coursework. So I would like to echo something Allison said earlier, that it is your unique journey. There is no one way to do it. And this really is a time to do the learning processes and really get to know what it is that drives you. So if you're at all interested in two areas of study and the schools you're interested in provide that double major or minor option, I'd highly encourage pursuing that.
I'll jump in briefly to say that I 100% agree with everything that Abigail said. We find at Amherst that having those like secondary humanities experiences, especially as like a STEM or social science student, can be super beneficial in your career in the long term. I think a lot of the questions that we were getting are about like passion. Like, I still want to study this. I love it in high school. Like, can I still study it in college? And the answer is yes. And it actually has a very good chance of helping your career, of building those skills that Abigail was talking about, that other people in your area of study might not have. That Amherst, for example, for a couple years running at this point, are pre-med interested students who have majored in something other than science, whether that be as a double major or as a single major while still doing the pre-med track, have a 100% acceptance rate to med school on their first round of applications. That there are really a lot of cool things that you can be doing with humanities that really make you stand out in a lot of these pools, even for things that really you wouldn't think are very humanities centric. Okay, we've got a couple more questions here that we can answer live, like this one from Eli. Should I apply to a more broad humanities major for law school, like history, or most specific, like political science? I still want to learn about many things since my mind is not made up on law school. Click the answer button. So I would say just first off that the broadness or specificity of a given major will mostly depend on the school that you're studying at. There are a lot of schools where political science might be a super broad major, or the history department requires you to specifically study a specific country or region or time in a specific place, and they might require you to specify more. So it's not just a generically given that one major might be more specific than another one. And also, if you are open about what you want to major in and what you want to do after you graduate, which I think is definitely the way to go about it, then absolutely keep your mind open. There's no reason to specifically pigeonhole yourself into one major that you may or may not want to study too early on. If you think that you don't know what you want to major, or you don't know what you want to do after you graduate, maybe pick a school or a college within a school that is more open to allowing you to explore those different things, and figure out exactly what you want to study during your years in college, because there are a lot of schools out there that don't require you to know that right out of high school. Anyone else have something to add to that?
Yeah, I was just going to add a couple things. I love talking about like pre-law. So one is that there you can technically major in anything, and prepare for law school. And so kind of echoing what Nathan said, I think it's more so rather than like pigeonholing into one specific thing that like just, while political science is a popular pre-law major, it's not the only one out there. I've met very successful law students who studied history, who studied English, some who studied business, some even who studied medicine, and ultimately went to law school. And I think, I believe Brown and Amber's, you both have like the open curriculum, correct? And so like there's some flexibility there. Like at Notre Dame, we have our standard curriculum, and which is something you might see at some institutions, where every student is taking a certain number of courses of the same courses each year, that allows a lot of flexibility to switch majors or double major, to add minors. So there is a lot of flexibility, and that can be something great to really ask, as and consider as you're pursuing your college search.
If I may add, um, when we talk about the humanities, we are generally talking about a liberal arts education. If you look at any of our four institutions and you're interested in pursuing any of the majors that we talked about today, you're either applying to the College of Letters and Sciences, the College of Letters, Arts and Sciences, the College of Arts and Sciences, humanities. When you see any of those titles in the school at a university, you know that you're applying to that liberal arts based education, which generally houses the arts and humanities, sciences, world languages and cultures, and social sciences. It depends from each school, from school to school across the country, but you'll find that they're all housed there. And one of the joys of a liberal arts education is this idea of the word liberal or free inquiry, and the ability to explore what it is that you'd like to study when you get to college. So there are some majors and some colleges where you really need to know right off the bat, I'm applying into this program, I'm applying into this school, I am saying that I am limiting myself to a particular area of interest because I'm really confident that's what I want to study. But with the liberal arts, our schools want you to actually explore for a little bit when you arrive. Maybe take a year or a year and a half to dabble in certain courses and try things out so that you can understand, all right, this is actually the major that I want to pursue. We also want to make sure that you can get a well rounded education. So when you declare your major, that usually happens sometime in your sophomore year, maybe even at the end of your sophomore year. And that's really when you get to focus. So if you're thinking to yourself right now, I know that I want to major in XYZ thing. That is great because it means you should be looking at each of our institutions to see if they even have that as a major to begin with. But it's a surprise that when you get to college, we're actually saying still keep an open mind for a little bit longer and explore. So if you're figuring out what pre-law looks like, you'll get an advisor to help you with that. If you're trying to figure out how to match that music education with medicine, like an advisor can help you with that. And we're also saying you have time to figure that out. The one caveat I want to give is, Nathan, I know that there were a lot of questions that came in about education into the Q&A. Education is a little bit of a different beast. At large universities, education may actually be housed in its own college that you need to apply to. This one also depends from school to school. Education might not always be in that same house within the university as the rest of those humanities majors. And part of that is because what you learn in an education degree isn't just the philosophy of teaching, and it also includes behavioral development, classroom management skills, purposes and policy behind education. And so it has a very interdisciplinary approach to it. And the other piece about education is that if you're looking to be credentialed as a teacher, oftentimes you need, in fact, you're required to have student teaching hours, which takes up a lot of time. So if anyone is interested in education, it's likely that you will have some kind of education major, if not a certificate. And in addition to that, your school is going to require you to have some kind of focus in a core area that demonstrates that you can teach that content. If you're interested in teaching sciences in high school, your school and your education department is going to explain, all right, here are the fundamental education classes you need to take, but also we need you to take a certain number of science classes in addition to that to meet the requirements to be able to teach that. And there are state regulations on that. And so even where your school is located may determine how it approaches that, because they might be thinking from their state's lens on how to make sure you get credentialed. So that one looks a little different from the other humanities majors that we've been talking about.
To make it even more complicated, there's also increasingly programs to like teach through your certification, where you can get possibly hired by a school prior to being like officially teaching certified, with the promise that in your first like 2 years you'll get there. So there's all sorts of complicating factors for teaching, and depending on what state you live in and what school you're going to. So those are good ones to be on the lookout for. Um, I've got one great final question here for all of our panelists from Olivia, about how we all would tackle our college choices as people who have already graduated. Specifically, if you would recommend taking a more general route with your classes or major, if you recommend specifying your interests and taking a more narrow major. So I can start us off very briefly by just saying I think studying broadly is fantastic. If you know exactly what you want to do, then it might not be for you. But as I said, I double majored in English and geology. I use like everything, so many things from both of those, as well as all of the other classes that weren't in either of those majors that I took in college every day. And I think that what we say about studying the liberal arts in general at Amherst is that your first stop is not your last stop. That whatever first job you get out of college, you have the experience and the expertise to be able to pivot into something else, regardless of what it is that you may or may not be interested in moving forward. So I studied very broadly. I've had a great experience so far. But other panelists, what would you recommend to our loyal viewers?
Nathan, I agree with everything you said. And I think Allison said it best earlier when she said she changed her major 3 times. I'm a fellow major changer. It took me a while to figure out exactly what I wanted to do. And that's a good thing, right? Because I thought I had this idea and I got there and it was different than what I had pictured in my head. So my best advice for you is to allow yourself to be surprised and to kind of prioritize that self exploration. In what it is that drives you, but also what it is you enjoy doing. Because ultimately, we're all going to college or graduating from college to go on and have a career, right? So the more that you can kind of lean into what it is that interests you, whether broadly or incorporating that kind of into maybe something else it is that you want to do, I think that is never going to be a deficit. It's always going to be an asset, and it's going to improve your performance no matter where you land.
Well, that is 9 o'clock. Thank you all so much for joining us once again. Feel free to reach out to us or the Stars College Network if you have any other questions, and have a wonderful rest of your evenings.